And welcome back to the Hot Lap. Day one of testing is now in the history books. McLaren are fastest. Surely they are going to win the championship. Red Bull look not fastest. Max Verstappen hasn't got a hope. What do the testing times really mean? Well, not quite that. Yes, it's good to be fastest, but there are loads of buts. We'll get into them in a bit. So if you're a McLaren fan, yes, I completely understand. You'd probably be quite happy. It's better than being last. But we'll get into all the times, all the sectors and everything else. But once again, just like our testing guide, you need to take every time, especially on day one, with, I don't want to say a grain of salt. Should we go with teaspoon? I mean, that's kind of gross. But yeah, let's go with a teaspoon of salt. Before we get into that, here are the beautiful liveries of all the cars. You got the McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes. And then you've got the Aston Martin. It's sadly, that's what they're kind of like done. It's kind of like Team A and Team B, sadly. But here's the Alpine, the Haas. I do like the Haas. Everyone is loving the livery of the V-Carb, the Racing Bulls. Then you've got the Williams, and you got the Stake of One, which you may have mistaken for a McLaren come the end of the session on that. Well, the second session on day one, simply because there was so much flow viz from Lando Norris's car. I thought his car was turning into the Incredible Hulk. But anyway, so this is the driver lineup. The driver lineup for today was obviously Piastri and Norris from McLaren. You can see it all there. I'm not going to bore you and go into all of it, but yeah, as you can see, it's pretty much even Stevens along the way. The only people big different really at the moment, yes, Ferrari TBC, is Lawson and Verstappen, and then on Thursday Lawson, on Friday Verstappen, obviously giving them a full day. I think everyone else is kind of like sharing it over the 3 days, but all the drivers do, as you can see, get the same time on the track, at least in theory, because on the second half of testing today, we had a power cut in terms of like the everywhere power cut. It was almost comical seeing in the pit lane, in the pit garages, mechanics using torches, putting their torches on their heads. It was interesting. So, any big incidents? Well, this was kind of a big incident. It was Liam Lawson having a little spin, luckily keeping out of the barrier and, just about moving on. So, well done, Liam Lawson, for keeping your shiny new Rebel out the barrier. I guess Max Verstappen wouldn't have been particularly happy, but this was, I believe, the morning session. So it could have been a lot worse, couldn't it? And he completely smashed it. But this is the testing day 1 PM session, final classification. Now, most people on the bottom of the grid weren't, but people like Lewis Hamilton went out in the morning. The better conditions probably would have been later in the day, and that is when Lando Norris did his time of a 1:30.430. He did 52 laps. George Russell in second, just a tenth and a half off on 70 laps. Lando Norris did have a problem early on in the session, and the McLaren mechanics did a very good job getting his car ready. And I do believe Verstappen, I know the Red Bull team had a slight issue as well, but George Russell second, Max Verstappen in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth, just shy of half a second. Carlos Sainz in the Williams in fifth, just over the half-second mark, and Pierre Gasly and Andrea Kimi Antonelli within 1 second, albeit Kimi Antonelli, for example, was earlier in the day, when you can make an argument that the conditions were less favourable. But Liam Lawson also earlier in the day, about 9/10 slower than Max Verstappen. Once again, these times mean nothing. I'll tell you why in a bit. Breathe in, and Alexander Albon in 9th. Yuki Tsunoda 10th. Isaac Hadjo in the other RB in 12th. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari 13th. Unlucky for some, 1.4 seconds off the pace. Yeah, he's not really 1.4 seconds off the pace, is he? I don't think. No. I don't think nor is Jack Doohan. I think, is he 1.4 seconds off the pace? A lot of pressure on Jack Doohan going into testing, and then he's got his home race. I think it's really, really unfair. This man deserves, I think, far more respect than a lot of people have given him credit for. People are already writing him off. Don't write him off. He's there. He's there for a reason, because he was good. Colapinto, yes, but also with Colapinto, we've seen the negative side of it, but I'm not going to get into that. So we've got Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, 1.4, 1.5 seconds adrift. I, for a second, don't think the Aston Martin is obviously that slow. Oscar Piastri's 1.6 seconds off Lando Norris. That's another example of the differences in obviously the beginning of the day, the end of the day, and then you don't know always how much fuel they're running and how hard they're pushing their tyres. For example, Nico Hulkenberg in 18th in the stake, and then the final two are Esteban Ocon and Oliver Behrman, 19th and 20th. That was, basically there. Now, what I thought this was interesting here, this is from the Lights Out blog, which we used a lot for the practice times as well. So when we look at the fastest sectors, Sector 1 was, the fastest sector was Red Bull on a 28.952. McLaren just, 0.174 off there. As you can see here, Williams having a cracking first sector as well. The first sector is, a lot of it is all about that straight line speed. Yeah, and Mercedes and Ferrari both pretty much a quarter of a second down. But then Sector 2, a 38.7 for McLaren, and they end up 0.193 behind for Mercedes. Ferrari better than Red Bull in that middle sector. And in that middle sector, there are more turns. You need a nimble car. And that's what's quite interesting, because then suddenly Red Bull are nearly 0.4 off. Now, Sector 3 again, a fast sector, where Mercedes this time were fastest. Ferrari were within a tenth, McLaren just outside a tenth, but Red Bull all the way down, 0.164. And obviously, the ideal lap, McLaren 90.430, and Mercedes 10th and a half off. Red Bull just around a quarter of a second off. Ferrari 3.5 tenths off. Williams half a second off. Alpine 8 tenths off the ideal lap. Racing Bulls 1 second off. Aston Martin a 1.1 second off. Sauber 1.2 and Haas 2.9, which I don't think Haas is going to be that slow. Absolutely not. But it does that could raise a few eyebrows. But once again, the issue of testing, you don't know what engine mode they've got. We don't know how much fuel they've got in the car. We do know when you work it out the tyre they're on, but sometimes how long have they had that tyre? We forget when they start doing their good times, and how much have they been told to push on that tyre as well. Basically, especially when they're doing long race runs. Long race runs. I sound like Jonathan Watson. Long race runs. So, the most laps from any driver today was well done Esteban Ocon on 88. And most laps from a team is 160. And that overall total was from Haas. Quickest time of the day, as I've already mentioned, was a 1:30.430. Yeah, by Lando Norris. So McLaren fans are going to be happy. Total laps complete on day one of testing. This is what I thought was interesting, because it shows how much more reliable these cars are getting. Total laps completed on day one of testing all the way through the years, showing you how reliable these cars. So, to 2015, a 607, and it increases pretty much year on year, apart from 2017, 28, almost, because to 2020, 1,358, and then we go all the way to 2025, 1,326. So 2015, 607, and 10 plus years later, 1,326 when you include, obviously, all those teams. Absolutely amazing. You just look at the reliability there. Now, 2015, yes, it was when the second year of these hybrids. In 2022 was quite impressive, because that was the first year of these new regulations, where they did 1,104. Now, in 2020, 1,358, that is the most they've ever done, but that's kind of an outlier. It's kind of like increasing. So laps completed by each team on day one. Well, as you know, Haas were leading on 160. The least was Aston Martin on 88. The second most were the Racing Bulls on 154. Then we had Mercedes on 148, just beating Ferrari on 141, who just lost out to Alpine on 140. 132 was Red Bull, 131 Williams, 118 McLaren, 114 Sauber, and 88 Aston Martin. Yeah, Aston Martin, what's going on there? That is really weird. And this is the other reason why, you don't want to take too much into testing. And this is just a reminder, which I thought was an interesting tweet by Motorsport. Just a reminder, Max Verstappen is the only driver in the last decade who has recorded the fastest lap in testing and then gone on to win the World Championship, and that was 2021. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. In inverted commas, winning that championship, let's be honest, but there we go. But it does show you that how much does times in testing really, really mean, Day one, as of the power cut, delays afternoon running. That's obviously from planetf1.com. And they're going with that. Lando Norris indeed topped the times. And after a productive morning session, it saw drivers complete more than more than 650 laps when you add it all up. And there were 20 minutes before the teams got out on track 2 with adjustments being made to the cars in the afternoon. And in the afternoon, we had Leclerc, Russell, Lando Norris and Pierre Gasly. And they all surpassed the quickest time from the morning set by Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, with the track, as you know, rubbering in through unseasonably cool conditions in Bahrain, so the track was a lot better. Hadjar taking part in his rookie season in Formula 1. He was sadly the first to spin, not Liam Lawson. I stand corrected if I mentioned that. Sorry, Liam. Completing a full 360, beautiful pirouette. Russell's initial time was improved the best time of the day to a 1:30.082. It was on the C3 tyre. Now, the higher the C, the higher the number next to the C, essentially the softer the tyre is. And that's before, obviously, Leclerc moved into the 130s. Halfway through the session, floodlights began to be required. There was a regional power cut, and the red flag came out for a long time. There was 50 minutes remaining, and they basically got their power back, and all cars went on running. Now, let's see what the race has to say, if there's anything interesting about it, because, once again, it doesn't mean anything. Day one of testing, really. The only time, if, for example, a team was absolutely ridiculously unreliable, then I think it would probably mean something. But I don't think it does. Here's the flow vid when I mentioned the green McLaren. Just once we got towards the end of the session, when there was a few minutes left, they covered the McLaren in green, and that's that flow vid. If you remember from our testing guide, where the aerodynamic specialists, let's say, can see the way where the paint runs, how good how accurate they were with their wind tunnel results, for example. And the reason they did it last is because there's a night shift. Yeah, you don't get punished for staying in the paddock, so there is a night shift, and the mechanics came out in the night shift, and they're going to be looking at all the data and seeing what they've learnt. I mean, it is intense, isn't it? So, and in relation to the C3 tyre, the race is basically saying the majority of the day's best times were set on that tyre. It's a compound the teams have all requested the most of, and it usually serves as the softest option available for Bahrain. Though well short of peak lap times, these cars could be capable on this track. Norris's effort, though, was 9/10 better than eventual champion Max Verstappen's day-topping lap time for the corresponding day of last year's test. So they've gone faster. Russell, the Mercedes, he pointed out, was particularly fond of cooler conditions. And this is one thing you also got to be careful of. Russell was talking about those cooler conditions. If you remember, the Mercedes likes the cooler conditions. Remember Hamilton's Silverstone win when it was raining. Remember, more specifically and more recently, George Russell's Las Vegas Grand Prix win, where he pretty much dominated from the start. And that people were also talking about the Red Bull RB21, the most notable car in terms of how similar it is to last year's RB20. It was like, spot the difference. You might come out loser on that. But it was the only contender for that title amid various lockups. And who was that? It was Lawson. A spin in the morning. And the other contender were the Racing Bulls rookie Isaac Hadjar. Isaac Hadjar throwing a 360. Here we go. Look at that. Woohoo! Nice. As we've already mentioned. Yeah. Well done. So Ferrari was fourth fastest of the big four, albeit teams notably, unlike 3 drivers ahead of him in the classification. Charles Leclerc set his and the team's best time just under a second up on what new teammate Lewis Hamilton has set in the morning before the power outage. Now, former teammate Carlos Sainz, now Williams, was within a tenth of the Ferrari. I think that Williams is fast. Is he going to be within a tenth of the Ferrari? Really? I don't think it is. The only team that ended up relatively short mileage was Aston Martin with its new AMR 25. Neither Alonso or Stroll crossed the 50 lap mark, which is slightly concerning. If that's the one thing that comes out of this test, is how reliable most of them are, but 50 laps, in which every single team split running between its 2 drivers in the morning session, and they were 15th and 16th respectively. And I think that's going to be a bit weird. Once again, these are obviously the results. And Alonso Stroll, I would say uncharacteristically slow, both of them. I know Piastri there in McLaren, he was there in the morning. It's a bit, I don't know, I just think it's a bit weird. I think it's a bit strange. If I'm honest, there's Lawson's whips today. That's the driver lineup, and that is obviously who was fast and who was not. Once again, it's only, everyone says it's only testing. So, onwards to day 2, where it is, I think, all the drivers are going to be there. I know Ferrari, it did say Ferrari TBC, didn't it? Yeah. It's going to be Hamilton and Leclerc, though. The only difference really is going to be the Red Bull, where we're not going to see Max Verstappen. Maybe on sim racing or something. It's going to be 100% Lawson for Red Bull. So we look forward to that. Anyway, if you made it to the end, you're absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. If you want to do a bit more to help and you're not already, please give us a subscribe. That would be super, super helpful. But until then, stay safe. Thank you for watching and speak to you soon.